Hi, my name is Patricia Gundlach and I'm the author of So You Want to Do Here in Hollywood. Have you ever wondered what the process is to create a hit TV show or a blockbuster movie? Well, Tom Sawyer, a showrunner and head writer for Murder, She Wrote for 24 episodes, is going to let us in on that process. Take it, Tom.
It, of course, starts out with being lucky enough to get the assignment or to sell them your idea. And then it's usually from there on kind of a hurried process. I've worked mostly in television. The process becomes one of deadlines and having to fulfill deadlines. And they can be short or long, depending upon the kind of show it is. I've done action-adventure series, what we call run and jump shows, where the whole script from idea to shooting script was 4 or 5 days. When I did Murder, She Wrote, which was a series that I was fortunate enough to be showrunner on for its last 5 seasons of the 12 seasons it ran, those scripts, because of the complexity of a mystery, took from 3 to 5 months to write. Unlike most of the series that I worked on where they were always behind on scripts, we always had 2 or 3 in the bank.
For the shows where you don't have that much time, like the 4 or 5 days, being a creative person, how do you work under that kind of pressure?
Well, it really isn't that hard once you get the technique down. The house number, for instance, with the action-adventure shows is to keep cutting to what are the bad guys doing. So
Perfect.
It's almost, I wouldn't say it's formulaic or mechanical, but there is a certain amount of that. And the key in all of it, of course, is for us to remember that we are entertainers. We have to keep the audience glued to the set.
Absolutely.
And if we bore them for 1 second, we lose them because they're all sitting there with their thumb hovering over the remote button.
Yeah, no kidding. Would that be the most challenging part of your job, to keep the scripts entertaining?
Absolutely. That is our job, in commercial television particularly, where you've got commercial breaks. If our job is to deliver the audience to the commercial break, that's who's paying the bills. If we don't do that, we're failing.
When you're writing a script, do you keep the crew in mind as far as like props, hair, wardrobe for budget reasons, or is that even an option?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. We get cautioned. There's always pressure from the studio to keep the budget down. So, if we can do it with a minimum of moves, if we're doing location, that kind of thing. In a show like Murder, She Wrote, which, as I said, was a hit for the whole 12 seasons it was on, we had to watch the budget. I mean, and now, from what I understand, the budgets have just ballooned for TV series. Our pattern budget for Murder, She Wrote was $1.8 million per episode, and I believe it's now up to $3 and $4 million for an hour dramatic series.
Isn't that amazing? As a showrunner, what kind of trials and tribulations did you have to deal with, and who were your allies when it got hot?
Well, it's political, but of course with a show like that, my biggest ally was Angela Lansbury, who's, I made sure that she was on my side and so on, and which was not hard because she was an absolute delight to work with. Basically, it's the coolest job you can have in the business as far as I'm concerned, even better than directing a movie, because it's the closest, in a collaborative art form such as we work, it is the closest you can come to having absolute control. I would tell the music guys what kind of music I wanted. I would sit in on the recording session for the scoring of the show. I was able to maintain a control on all kinds of levels, casting, set design, all of it, as well as scripts.
And what about when you got notes from the network?
Well, that was interesting with that show. I was on 15 different series on staff and over my career, and we almost always got notes from the network. With Murder, She Wrote, they signed off on it at the beginning because it was a mystery and they didn't understand mysteries. So we didn't even have to submit our scripts to them.
Oh my God. Do you think it's still like that today?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. It's become so much more corporatized, as I'm sure you know, today, that it's hard to say. But certainly with CBS, who were, they were very careful about their shows. I would think it would be the same today.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to sit in the chair like you are and have a successful career like you have?
Well, I would say, and I get asked this a lot, put yourself in luck's way. And what do I mean by that? Network. Get out there. Get out of that little room that you work in and meet as many people as you can, as many people who are regarded as winners as you can. Because you never know who or what is going to be the result of getting to know these people. When I came out to Hollywood, I thought of myself as a director. I'd been a director back in New York doing commercials and documentaries and so on. I had studied with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, and I loved playing God. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to be a movie director, or at least give it a shot. And to that end, I had planned ahead of time to make a low-budget film as a calling card out here, as I knew you had to make a splash. It was a tits and ass comedy called Alice Goodbody. And the writer fell through as soon as I got out here from New York. So I wrote it myself. By the time I finished the film, I'd been here for, 2.5 years. And I had been meeting people.
When meeting people and marketing yourself, I would think you'd have to have a certain type of personality, likable.
Oh, absolutely. Certainly among my gifts that I was personable, and I mean, just to give you an example of the fortuitousness of some of these things, I was just finishing my movie, joined a gym class in Beverly Hills, and it was it was a gymnastics class, and there were only 6 people in the class. While 2 of us were exercising on the rings or parallel bars, the others were sitting there schmoozing. Well, in that class were a comedy writer who had written 25 or 26 episodes of All in the Family and Chico and the Man, a music arranger by the name of Ray Charles. He used to call himself the Deaf Ray Charles. He's from Chicago. And a new director, Joel Shoemaker, who went on to quite a career, and a man who I had never met, but I had read about for years. He had been the head of CBS back in New York, and there had been books written about him, and now he was running MGM. And his name was James T. Aubrey, and he was a legend in the business. And I wasn't trying to suck up to him, but we just hit it off. All of us did. And we all went to each other's parties. Jim optioned one of my screenplays and put me together with other people, Bill Persky and Carl Reiner, and one thing led to another. I finished the movie and I started screening it for distributors and also the people I'd met at parties who were in the business. Mm-hmm. And one of the couples who I invited to a screening one afternoon were a lady named Lila Garrett, who is a multiple Emmy-winning producer, writer, director, and her companion, Mort Lockman, who had been Bob Hope's head writer for 28 years. I'd met him socially at these parties that we used to have. At the end of the screening, Lila comes up to me and says, "You should be writing for television." I I had never thought of it before, literally. I said, so how would I do that? How would I get started? She said, well, I got a production deal. She said, call me if you know. So 2 weeks later, I called her. And it was this classic Beverly Hills lady, I can't talk now, I'm on my way out to a meeting. And my instincts were good even then. I said, Lila, I just want to give you one line. And she said, okay, quick, what is it? I said, a gang comedy on a tacky used car lot in the valley. And there was this appropriately timed comic pause. And she said, great, you'll write it and I'll produce it. And that was the end of the phone call. 2 weeks later, my first paid assignment in Hollywood, I was writing a comedy pilot for CBS.
Wow, lucky you.
Yeah. I mean, really, luck plays so much a part of it. It doesn't hurt if you've got talent, but believe me, in this town, it ain't a requirement. I also tell people that who want to break in that your biggest competition is not from people with more talent than you. It's from people who want it worse than you do.
What can you say to our people out there in YouTube land about storytelling, filmmaking, anything that you'd want to add to help them package their deals, to help them with a career, getting started?
Well, I think that you need to study and learn from people like me who have been successful at it, how to pitch, how to present yourself, and how to present your ideas. That's keeping in mind a lot of realities, like the fact that people's attention spans are near zero. And so you need to nail in very concise terms, as I did with the comedy of the used car lot, the essence of a show. A good pitch, by the way, is one where the person who's listening to you begins writing it in his head as they're listening to you. That, even if they're not writing it the way you imagine it, you're doing your job. That's how you win in this business.
Anything you'd want to share with how to work under those pressures?
Believe in yourself. Because, again, one of my gifts, and I didn't realize for years that I had it, was I was invulnerable to rejection. I just always assumed that anyone who rejected me was out of his effing mind. and I took it for granted for years that was the way it was for everybody. Many decades after I got into the business, I realized other people were vulnerable to rejection. Wow. So it does help to be convinced that they're wrong.
A little bit of an ego will help.
It doesn't hurt.
What about the people who are looking at the bottom line of the paycheck that they're going to get, and how sometimes that could get in their way of their creativity?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question, Patricia. If you're doing it for the money, don't do it. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. My entire motivation, and I know this will sound facetious, but it's true, is I wanted to see if I could fool them, and I did. I kept looking over, for the first few years, I kept looking over my shoulder thinking at any moment that I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but they never did.
Perfect.
I discovered, obviously, that I had, abilities that I didn't realize I had. My first career, very briefly, was as a cartoonist and illustrator back in New York. Wow. And it was long time in this business before I realized how that had prepared me. Drawing pictures is a right brain, left brain, I forget what it is, but you can talk while you're doing it. And I would work in a studio with 3 or 4 other guys, and somebody would come in the morning with the joke of the day. And we would then deconstruct it and rewrite it for the next 2 hours. What if you put this word or this sentence in front of that one?
So you're already doing it.
And if you know how to tell jokes, that's story structure, Yeah. And I look back on that now, I realize that was my best writing. I have gotten paid for having fun for my entire career. I love what I do, and I love the business, and I love doing television because of the immediacy and the fact that, it happens in a hurry, as opposed to a movie, which can, or even a novel, where after you sell it to the publishing house, it's a year before the damn thing comes out.
Yeah.
One of the great things about writing for television was frequently I'd write it one day and I'd see it on the screen in dailies the next.
Tom has so much to say, I had to do this in 2 parts. Head over to part 2.
I just wanna let you